The underestimated species. The massive crystalline chamber stretched across several kilometers, its translucent walls reflecting the light of 1,000 different star systems. Representatives from over 500 species filled the tiered seating, each section designed to accommodate the unique environmental needs of its occupants. The aquatic brenthoids floated in their sealed water columns, while the gaseous Veltari shimmered behind energy containment fields. In the center of this grand assembly, a simple human woman stood at the speaking podium, looking remarkably ordinary compared to the exotic alien delegates surrounding her. Captain Elena Vasquez wore a standard Earth Navy uniform, dark blue with simple metal insignia. Her short brown hair was pulled back in a regulation style, and her calm brown eyes surveyed the massive gathering without showing any sign of intimidation. She had been chosen to represent humanity at this historic moment, when Earth would officially join the Galactic Confederation, though she suspected most of the aliens present had already forgotten her species existed. High Chancellor Zixtar of the Zarathi Empire rose from his floating throne, his towering form casting shadows across the chamber floor. The Zarathi were humanoid in basic shape, but stood nearly 3 meters tall with midnight black skin that seemed to absorb light. Their forearms ended in clawed hands, and their eyes glowed with an inner fire that spoke of millennia of conquest and dominance. Zixtar had led the Confederation's military forces for over 2 centuries, and his arrogance was legendary even among his own kind. The Confederation Council recognizes the species known as humans from the planet Earth, Zixtar announced, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustic systems. As per standard protocols, please present your technological capabilities for review and classification. Elena activated a simple holographic projector that looked ancient compared to the quantum displays used by other species. The images it produced showed Earth's space fleet, nuclear submarines, jet aircraft, and various military installations. To most observers, it looked like a museum exhibition of primitive warfare technology. Our primary space vessels are constructed using titanium steel alloys and measure between 150 and 900 meters in length, Elena began in a clear, steady voice. Our largest ships can accommodate crews of up to 3,000 personnel. Our defensive systems utilize composite armor plating and basic energy deflection systems. Our primary weapons include kinetic projectiles, chemical explosive warheads, and basic laser arrays. A ripple of barely suppressed laughter ran through sections of the chamber. The insectoid Krethak delegates clicked their mandibles in what passed for amusement among their species. The crystalline Silvani actually chimed with musical tones that clearly expressed their disdain. Dr. Veltanis of the Scientific Council leaned forward with obvious curiosity. Fascinating. Your technology appears to be several centuries behind current galactic standards. You still use chemical propulsion for space travel? And kinetic weapons instead of plasma arrays? That is correct, Elena replied without showing any embarrassment. We have focused our development on reliability and practical effectiveness rather than advancing into more exotic technologies. High Chancellor Zixtar nodded with obvious condescension. How refreshingly traditional. And what is your experience with interstellar conflict? Have your forces engaged in significant military operations? Elena paused thoughtfully. Humans have been engaged in various forms of warfare throughout our recorded history. We have extensive experience in ground combat, naval operations, aerial warfare, atmospheric defense, and limited space combat operations. Against whom? Pressed General Cortex of the Hegemony Defense Forces. Surely not against any spacefaring civilizations. Against ourselves, Elena answered simply. This response caused confused murmurs throughout the chamber. Most civilized species had achieved global peace centuries before developing faster-than-light travel. The idea of a species fighting itself all the way to the stars seemed almost barbaric to beings who had forgotten what real warfare looked like. Commander Yixtal of the Aquatic Alliance spoke from within her water column. You engage in combat with your own kind? How wonderfully primitive. Do you at least use energy weapons or plasma charges? We use whatever methods prove most effective, Elena replied calmly. Our weapons development has always been guided by Practical battlefield results rather than theoretical advancement. The questions continued for nearly an hour, with various delegates asking about Earth's industrial capacity, population size, and scientific achievements. Each answer seemed to confirm what the assembled aliens already believed about humanity. They were a backward species that had somehow stumbled into space travel, despite their primitive technology and barbaric tendencies. High Chancellor Zixtar finally called for the formal classification vote. Based on the presented evidence, I recommend that the species known as humans be granted Category C membership status. They will be assigned agricultural and mining territories in sectors 47 through 52, well away from established trade routes and diplomatic centers. Category C was the lowest possible membership tier, essentially meaning that humans would be allowed to grow food and extract raw materials while being protected by the more advanced species. It was the Confederation's polite way of saying that Earth was too primitive to be trusted with anything important. Elena accepted the classification with the same calm demeanor she had maintained throughout the proceedings. Earth gratefully accepts the Confederation's protection and looks forward to peaceful cooperation with all member species. As the ceremony concluded, delegates began filing out of the chamber while engaging in animated conversations about the new members. Elena could hear fragments of their discussions as she gathered her simple equipment. "Did you see their weapons specifications?" laughed a Zarathi officer. "Kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. They might as well be throwing rocks." "Their ships looked like flying junkyards," added a representative from the Technology Council. "How do they even achieve orbital velocity with such crude propulsion systems?" "At least they will be harmless," observed a Silvani diplomat. "Put them in the agricultural sectors where they can grow food and stay out of everyone's way." Elena and her small delegation made their way through the massive station's corridors, passing shops and facilities that showcase technology beyond anything available on Earth. Anti-gravity platforms moved cargo without visible support systems. Energy barriers contained atmospheric mixtures for different species. Quantum computers processed information faster than human minds could comprehend. Back aboard their transport vessel, Colonel James Wright, Elena's military advisor, finally voiced what everyone was thinking. "Captain, they really do think we are primitives." Elena nodded as she watched the magnificent Confederation station shrink behind them. Ships from hundreds of different worlds moved through carefully controlled traffic patterns, their exotic propulsion systems creating beautiful displays of light and energy. "That reaction was exactly what we expected, Colonel. In fact, it could not have gone better. But ma'am, when they discover our true capabilities, they will realize that we deliberately misrepresented our technology level. They will learn what we choose to show them," Elena interrupted. "For now, we are exactly what they think we are, harmless farmers who got lucky enough to develop space travel." Unknown to the Confederation's leadership, Elena Vasquez was not simply a diplomatic representative. She was a former Earth Defense Admiral who had commanded humanity's most classified military operations. The primitive technology she had demonstrated was only what Earth's government wanted the aliens to see. Deep beneath the Colorado mountains, Director Caney Morrison stood in the control center of Project Silent Guardian, Earth's most closely guarded secret. Banks of quantum computers hummed quietly while displaying tactical information from across human space. Holographic star charts showed the positions of Earth's hidden defense fleets, their locations carefully chosen to remain undetectable by alien sensor arrays. Morrison was a tall, lean man in his 50s with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He had spent the last 15 years preparing for this moment, when humanity would take its place among the galactic powers while keeping its true strength hidden from potential enemies. "Status report," Morrison requested as Elena's transmission reached Earth. "The Confederation bought our performance completely," reported Dr. Lyra Thorne, the project's chief xenobiologist. She was a brilliant scientist who had spent years studying alien psychology and predicting their reactions to human behavior. "Their psychological profiles suggest they will classify us as a primitive agricultural species and essentially ignore us." "Which gives us exactly what we need," Morrison replied with satisfaction. "Time to observe, learn, and prepare." The Silent Guardian project had been conceived after humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. While the Confederation presented itself as a peaceful alliance, Earth's intelligence agencies had detected signs of underlying tensions and potential conflicts. Several member species maintained massive military forces despite the supposed peace. Border disputes simmered between different empires. Some species showed disturbing signs of expansion and conquest mentalities. Rather than reveal humanity's true technological capabilities and potentially become a target, Earth's leadership had decided to hide their advanced weapons and military strength behind a facade of primitive simplicity. If war ever came to the galaxy, the aliens would face an enemy they never saw coming. Morrison walked to the main display showing Earth's hidden arsenal. Orbital defense platforms disguised as communication satellites. Stealth destroyers using technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. Weapons based on principles that the Confederation's scientists had never encountered. Most importantly, a military doctrine developed through centuries of human warfare experience that no peaceful alien civilization could understand or counter. Director, we are receiving priority communications from our deep space monitoring stations, announced Lieutenant Sarah Chen from the communications console. Multiple anomalous readings detected at the galaxy's outer rim. Morrison frowned as he reviewed the incoming data. Long-range sensors were picking up massive objects approaching from the dark space between galaxies. The signatures were unlike anything in Earth's databases or Confederation records. They moved in perfect geometric formations at velocities that should have been impossible for solid matter. Analysis? Morrison requested. Unknown, sir, Chen replied. Whatever these objects are, they number in the thousands, possibly millions. They appear to be artificial constructs of some kind. Dr. Thorne leaned over the displays with growing concern. Director, these formation patterns suggest coordination and intelligence. If these are ships, they represent a fleet larger than anything the Confederation has ever assembled. Morrison stared at the readings with a growing sense of unease. The galaxy might be facing its first real military threat in centuries, and the Confederation's pampered civilizations had no idea what was coming. Their energy weapons and quantum shields had never been tested against a truly hostile force. Continue monitoring, Morrison ordered, and begin quietly alerting our defense fleets. If these unknown entities prove hostile, the galaxy is going to learn very quickly that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones hiding in plain sight. In the outer regions of Confederation space, automated monitoring stations detected the approaching objects and dutifully reported their findings to the Central Command on the Zerathi homeworld. The duty officers reviewed the data with casual interest, filing it under potential natural phenomena and scheduling a routine investigation for the following week. After all, what possible threat could exist that their advanced technology could not handle? The Confederation's military had not faced a real challenge in over 300 years. Their weapons could vaporize asteroids, their shields could deflect plasma storms, and their sensors could detect a single ship from several light years away. They had no concept of an enemy that had been specifically designed to counter their technological advantages. An enemy that grew stronger with each advanced weapon used against it. An enemy that had consumed countless civilizations across the cosmic deep, always growing more sophisticated and more deadly. The objects continued, their steady approach toward Confederation space, their dark hulls revealing nothing about their intentions or capabilities. Behind them stretched a trail of lifeless star systems, entire civilizations reduced to raw materials and energy. But they had never encountered a species like humanity, a species that had perfected the art of warfare through necessity and maintained their military edge even in times of peace. A species that understood that sometimes the most effective solutions were also the simplest ones. The galaxy was about to learn that primitive did not mean powerless, and that the most advanced civilizations were often the most vulnerable to attacks they never saw coming. The revelation of hidden strength. 6 months had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Confederation, and humanity had quietly settled into their assigned role as agricultural producers in the Outer Rim territories. The Confederation's leadership had essentially forgotten about the primitive humans, focusing instead on more pressing matters of trade disputes and diplomatic ceremonies. This comfortable ignorance was about to be shattered in the most dramatic way possible. The first alarm reached High Chancellor Zixtar while he was reviewing expansion plans for Zarathi mining operations. The priority communication from Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega-7 carried code classifications he had not seen in decades. As the data streams filled his command center displays, the proud Zarathi leader felt something he had not experienced in his long military career: genuine fear. "Impossible," Zixtar whispered as he studied the tactical readings. "Activate all defense protocols immediately. Contact every fleet commander in the Confederation." The objects that had been approaching from intergalactic space had finally entered Confederation territory, and they were not the natural phenomena that junior officers had assumed. The approaching fleet consisted of millions of identical vessels, each one a dark pyramid roughly 500 meters on each side. Their hulls seemed to absorb light and sensor beams, making detailed analysis impossible. More terrifying still, every attempt at communication had been met with silence. The approaching armada simply ignored all contact attempts while maintaining perfect formation and steady velocity toward the Confederation's core worlds. Commander Yixtal of the Aquatic Alliance received the emergency summons while conducting routine fleet exercises near her homeworld. Her first reaction was disbelief, followed by professional concern as she reviewed the strategic implications. "Deploy the 2nd Defense Fleet immediately," she ordered from her flagship's command center. "These unknown vessels will learn that Confederation space is well protected." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as military commanders who had spent decades in comfortable peace suddenly found themselves facing the first real threat in their lifetimes. The Confederation's combined fleets began moving toward intercept coordinates, confident that their superior technology would quickly resolve whatever challenge these mysterious invaders presented. Admiral Rextar of the Zarathi 3rd Battle Fleet commanded the first engagement force to meet the unknown armada. His fleet consisted of 400 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, each one equipped with plasma cannons capable of melting asteroids and quantum shields that could deflect the energy output of a small star. "Unknown vessels, you are entering Sovereign Confederation space," Rextar broadcast on all frequencies. "Identify yourselves and state your intentions, or face the consequences of trespass." The response came not in words, but in action. The pyramid ships suddenly shifted formation, spreading into a perfect sphere around the Confederation fleet. Energy readings from their hulls spiked dramatically as systems that had remained dormant for the long journey between galaxies finally activated. "All ships, raise shields and prepare for combat," Rextar ordered. "Whatever these entities are, they will learn not to challenge the Confederation." The battle began with a magnificent display of Confederation firepower. Hundreds of plasma cannons erupted simultaneously, creating artificial stars that burned away the darkness of space. Quantum torpedoes streaked between the opposing forces, each carrying enough destructive power to crack a planet's crust. The combined energy output was beyond anything most species could imagine. The plasma beams struck the pyramid ships directly, and for a brief moment it seemed like the Confederation's technological superiority would carry the day. But then something impossible happened. Instead of being destroyed or damaged, the enemy vessels began absorbing the incoming energy. Their dark hulls glowed brighter with each hit, as if they were feeding on the Confederation's most powerful weapons. "Admiral, our weapons are having no effect," reported Rextar's tactical officer with growing panic. "Sensor readings indicate the enemy ships are actually growing stronger." Before Rextar could respond, the pyramid ships returned fire, but they did not use weapons of their own design. Instead, they redirected the Confederation's plasma energy back at the fleet, amplified and focused into devastatingly precise beams. The first Confederation ship to fall was the heavy battlecruiser Stellar Pride. The redirected plasma beam sliced through its quantum shields as if they were not there, cutting the 2-kilometer-long vessel completely in half. Explosions rippled through the fleet as more ships fell victim to their own weapons turned against them. "Retreat. All ships fall back," Rextar commanded. But it was already too late. The pyramid ships had surrounded his fleet in a perfect sphere, and their adaptive systems had analyzed every weapon, every shield frequency, and every tactical maneuver the Confederation forces possessed. Within 12 minutes of the first shot being fired, Admiral Rextar's entire fleet was reduced to drifting wreckage. Only a handful of escape pods survived to carry news of the disaster back to Confederation space. The entities that the survivors had begun calling the Devourers did not pause to examine their victory. They immediately resumed course toward the EO. Confederation's core systems, their formations as perfect as before. News of the fleet's destruction sent shockwaves through every Confederation world. Emergency sessions convened on dozens of planets as military leaders struggled to understand how their most advanced weapons had proven not only useless, but actually beneficial to their enemies. Dr. Veltanis of the Scientific Council worked frantically in his laboratory, analyzing sensor data from the failed engagement. What he discovered defied everything the Confederation understood about physics and warfare. The enemy vessels do not simply absorb energy, he reported to the Emergency Council session. They analyze it, understand it, and then improve upon it. Every weapon we use teaches them how to build better defenses and more effective attacks. High Chancellor Zixtar paced his command center like a caged predator. Then what do you suggest? How do we fight an enemy that grows stronger with every engagement? I do not know, Veltanis admitted. Our entire military doctrine is based on energy weapons and quantum technology. If the Devourers can counter all advanced systems, then we may be facing an unwinnable war. The next several weeks proved the scientists' fears correct. Every Confederation fleet sent against the Devourers met the same fate as the first. Energy weapons were absorbed and redirected. Quantum shields were analyzed and bypassed. Advanced targeting computers were hacked and turned against their own ships. The mechanical invaders moved through Confederation space like a plague, consuming entire star systems and converting the raw materials into more pyramid ships. Civilian populations fled before the advancing swarm, while their protectors fell helplessly before an enemy they could not understand. Within a month, the Devourers had consumed over 200 star systems and destroyed more than 5,000 Confederation warships. Refugee fleets clogged space lanes as billions fled toward the galactic core, hoping to find safety behind the remaining defense lines. In the Confederation Council chambers, panic had replaced diplomatic protocol. Representatives from hundreds of worlds shouted accusations and demands while their military forces crumbled before an unstoppable enemy. We must consider surrender, suggested the Nerian delegate desperately. Perhaps we can negotiate some form of coexistence. They do not communicate, Dr. Veltanis replied. Every attempt at contact has been ignored. They simply take what they want and convert everything else into raw materials. High Chancellor Zixtar looked older than his 400 years as he surveyed the chaos around him. The Confederation's greatest civilizations were facing extinction, and their leaders had no idea how to fight back. We must consider every option, he said quietly. Contact every member world, request any information or technology that might help us understand this enemy. The desperate plea went out across Confederation space, reaching every world that still maintained communications. Most responses were variations of, "We have already committed all available resources," or, "Our evacuation fleets are standing by." But one response was different. On the agricultural world of New Terra in Sector 49, Captain Elena Vasquez received the Confederation's desperate message in her modest colonial administration office. She read the tactical reports carefully, studying the Devourers' capabilities and the Confederation's failed countermeasures. Interesting, she said to herself. They really do not know how to fight. Elena activated her secure communication system and sent a coded message to Earth. Within hours, Director Caney Morrison was reviewing the situation from his command center deep beneath the Colorado mountains. Analysis? Morrison asked his staff. The Devourers appear to be specifically designed to counter advanced civilizations, reported Dr. Lyra Thorne. Their adaptive systems can analyze and counter any exotic technology within minutes. However, there are significant gaps in their capabilities. Morrison studied the tactical data with growing interest. Explain. They counter energy weapons by absorption and redirection. They bypass quantum shields by analyzing their frequency patterns. They hack advanced computers by interfacing with their quantum cores, Thorne continued. But all of their countermeasures assume they are fighting advanced technology. Morrison smiled for the first time in weeks. They have never faced an enemy that remembers how to fight dirty. The Silent Guardian project had spent years preparing for potential threats, but the planners had never imagined anything like the Devourers. However, the fundamental principle remained the same. Sometimes the most advanced enemy was also the most vulnerable to simple solutions. Activate Protocol 7, Morrison ordered. It is time to remind the galaxy what real warfare looks like. Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, flagship of humanity's Third Defense Fleet. Around her, the bridge crew worked at stations that looked primitive compared to the holographic displays and quantum interfaces used by Confederation species. Physical buttons, analog gauges, and basic computer screens filled the workspace. But Elena knew something the Confederation had forgotten. Simple technology had one crucial advantage over advanced systems. It could not be analyzed, hacked, or turned against its users by an enemy that specialized in corrupting sophisticated equipment. Fleet status report, Elena requested. All ships report ready for combat operations, Admiral, replied her tactical officer. Elena had been promoted to Admiral for this mission, though she suspected it might be a temporary rank if they did not. Survive the next few hours. Signal the fleet. Maintain radio silence and proceed to intercept coordinates. The human battle group consisted of 89 vessels of various sizes and configurations. They were angular utilitarian ships built from titanium steel alloys with no energy shields or exotic propulsion systems. To any observer, they looked like museum pieces from an earlier era of space warfare. The Devourers detected the approaching human fleet and began moving to intercept. 800 pyramid ships arranged themselves in perfect combat formation, their hulls already glowing as they powered up their adaptive systems in preparation for another easy victory. Range to target? Elena asked. 40,000 kilometers and closing, her navigation officer reported. Hold position. Do not engage until they enter optimal range. The Devourers continued their approach, confident in their ability to absorb and redirect whatever primitive weapons the humans might possess. Their previous encounters with Confederation forces had taught them to expect plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and particle beam arrays. They were not prepared for what humanity had brought to this battle. At 25,000 kilometers, the Devourers opened fire with redirected Confederation weapons, brilliant beams of plasma energy that had been stolen from previous engagements. The attack struck the human ships and simply dissipated against their hulls. The energy scattered by ablative armor designed to handle thermal loads rather than deflect them. Elena smiled grimly. Ablative armor performing as expected. These are not energy weapons they can redirect. At 20,000 kilometers, she gave the order that changed the course of galactic history. All ships engage the enemy. Target their formation centers. What happened next defied everything the Devourers had learned about galactic warfare. Instead of energy beams or exotic particles, the human ships fired solid metal projectiles. Tungsten rods weighing several tons each, accelerated by electromagnetic launchers to tremendous velocities. The railgun projectiles struck the Devourer ships before their adaptive systems could even register the threat. There was no energy signature to analyze, no exotic physics to counter. Just basic kinetic energy and the immutable laws of momentum conservation. The first Devourer ship hit by a tungsten rod simply disintegrated. The projectile punched through its hull and continued through the entire vessel, the kinetic energy tearing it apart from the inside. Explosions rippled through the enemy formation as more railgun rounds found their targets. The Devourers tried to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. The human weapons used no advanced technology. No quantum effects, no exotic energy signatures. They were just very fast pieces of metal, and physics was not something that could be analyzed and countered. Direct. Hits on 47 enemy vessels, reported the tactical officer. Enemy formation is breaking apart. Elena watched with satisfaction as the Devourer ships scattered, their perfect coordination disrupted by attacks they could not understand. Launch fighters, From the human carriers came something the galaxy had not seen in centuries: small, piloted spacecraft carrying conventional weapons instead of automated systems. The fighters moved in unpredictable patterns, using human intuition and combat experience rather than computer-controlled flight algorithms. The Devourers tried to target the fighters with their absorbed Confederation weapons, but the small craft were too fast and too unpredictable. They darted between the larger ships, firing missiles with conventional explosive warheads. Again, the enemy adaptation systems found nothing to adapt to. These were simple chemical explosions, crude by galactic standards, but devastatingly effective. Against an enemy that expected sophisticated attacks, within 4 hours the entire Devourer force had been eliminated. 800 pyramid ships reduced to debris by weapons so primitive that the Confederation's military academies no longer taught their principles. Elena opened a communication channel to the Confederation Emergency Command Center. High Chancellor Zixtar's image appeared on her screen, his expression showing amazement and desperate hope. "Confederation Command, this is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Earth Defense Forces," she announced formally. "The Devourer fleet in Sector 12 has been eliminated. Human forces are advancing to engage additional enemy concentrations." The statement sent shockwaves through every Confederation world. The primitive humans had accomplished what the galaxy's most advanced civilizations could not. They had found a way to defeat the seemingly invincible Devourers. "Admiral Vasquez," Zixtar said carefully, "your victory is remarkable, but surely you cannot mean to continue offensive operations against the main Devourer fleet." "High Chancellor, the Devourers are designed to counter civilizations that have forgotten how to wage war," Elena replied. "They have never faced an enemy that still remembers the old ways." Dr. Veltanis leaned into the transmission pickup. "Admiral, your weapons, they use no advanced technology at all." "Correct. Kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, and conventional guidance systems. The Devourers cannot adapt to weapons that have no exotic properties to analyze." The revelation changed everything. The Confederation's most advanced military forces had been using precisely the wrong tactics against an enemy specifically designed to counter their technological advantages. Over the following weeks, human fleets systematically eliminated Devourer concentrations throughout Confederation space. Each engagement followed the same pattern. The enemy's adaptive systems proved useless against weapons that had no advanced technology to counter. The liberation of Confederation space was completed in less than 2 months. Hundreds of star systems were freed from Devourer occupation, and the mechanical invaders were driven back into the dark space between galaxies. The aftermath of the Devourer War, as historians would later call it, transformed the political landscape of the galaxy. The species that had mocked humanity's primitive technology now lined up to request military cooperation agreements and technology-sharing treaties. Captain Elena Vasquez stood once again in the Confederation Council chambers, but this time the atmosphere was very different. Instead of barely concealed contempt, she faced expressions of respect, gratitude, and more than a little fear. The Confederation Council formally recognizes the species known as humans as Category A members, High Chancellor Zixtar announced, with full voting rights and military command authority. Elena nodded graciously, though she knew the real victory was not political recognition. Humanity had proven that advanced technology was not always superior to practical solutions, and that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were the ones that everyone underestimated. The galaxy had learned to respect the species that still remembered how to fight.